How's it going, YouTube and my future self? Welcome back to the Lab TCG. My name is Will, and today we're going to be talking about the Lab TCG retrospective. Now, this video is probably pretty interesting for many of the viewers, as I don't think I've uploaded to this YouTube channel in over 2 years, which a lot has changed in that time, both the way I look, the things that I do for work, all sorts of stuff. And so the reason that I want to make this video is because I want to talk about what the results of spending 4 years of my life to building a Pokemon business in e-commerce and YouTube and all this stuff actually resulted in. Because, I meet a lot of people through the Pokemon trading card game, or people that I meet outside of Pokemon that tell me they want to start a business or they want to do something and put a ton of effort into it. And I love that. I love that a lot. But it's not as easy as it seems. It often takes going against the grain, and sometimes the results are not what they seem in the moment. And it's about delayed gratification and what they can be in the future that really, really amount to something. And so the headline that I'm going to give you here is, you guys know much better than I do about what's going on in the Pokemon market nowadays. But the one thing I do know is I didn't sell any of the sealed product that I had from running the Lab TCG. Pretty much when the business ended and I kind of moved around, I was no longer, in possession of the sealed product, at least where I was living. I probably had about $30,000 in sealed product, a bunch of singles and stuff, listed singles on TCG Player, ultra rares, graded cards, stuff like that. And so today, I, logged all this stuff in a Pokemon stock market tracking thing that has the value of all this stuff. And now that portfolio of sealed product and some of the singles is worth over $100,000. And so that is crazy to me, especially this year. I mean, I'm not going to edit this video and make it super fancy, but if I just look at the 1 year time frame, the sealed product in December of 2024 was around $35,000, and over the course of this year, it's gone up 53, or that's not right. It's up to 100K. And I think the reason it's a little choppy is because I added some stuff that I found when going through it. But it's actually crazy that it seems like the Pokemon market's extremely hot this year. Singles are off the roof. I mean, I have old format decks that I made purely because I love the Pokemon trading card game and love playing the old formats with my friends from when I used to compete, where singles are, things that I picked up for $5 are now $300 full arts from Black and White. And so I wanted to make this video to kind of encourage people that are still out there grinding, running a Pokemon business, doing their stuff, that this stuff takes time, and sometimes seeing the results and the fruits of your labor doesn't come quickly or easily. And what's really, really brilliant about the Lab TCG and this YouTube channel is, even though I myself am no longer involved in the community, I still see we have a Discord server with 600 people. I still see that every month the YouTube videos get thousands of views, comments of people still looking at the old videos, asking questions, how do I sell these cards? How do I buy this? What are shipping rates? All this stuff. And so it's really, really cool, even though I'm not actively involved in the community anymore or actively posting, to kind of see that this thing that I created still lives on without me and is inspiring tons of people to kind of do all this stuff. So let's kind of zoom back in a little bit. And for some of the people that have been here since the beginning of seeing this YouTube channel, you would know that my first videos were about me kind of taking graded cards and showing off the graded cards that I was doing on the Lab TCG. There was no industrial shelves behind me in the location where I was filming the videos or anything like that. It was just some shelves with some collectibles. And kind of over time, as I started to build up some real business momentum, I started uploading more frequently on a regular cadence, just kind of going very naturally about, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm learning. A lot of it came from I'm doing this thing and I don't see YouTube videos about this topic that I would want to watch, so I want to make them. And so I kind of kept doing that, and I would upload, and then I'd get comments, and then I'd turn the comments into videos, and over time it would grow, and then I kind of had to take a hiatus. I came back a little bit later, started making videos again. Those started to get much more momentum, and slowly but surely the videos over time kind of moved away from more of the very authentic kind of day in the life to more, there's a lot of excitement around this. How can we kind of highlight the really cool stuff about running a Pokemon business? And, kind of thinking about that critically, running a Pokemon business is not easy at all. It takes a ton of effort, and arguably at times, there were times where I would probably have been working for less than minimum wage doing the type of work that I was doing, packaging orders, shipping envelopes, all of that type of stuff. But the thing that always kind of kept me going is, one, I wanted to teach myself business skills because I thought it would be super important to other areas of my life, such as, my profession, or just, being able to do business-like stuff in the future. But also, I just loved Pokemon. I had a huge passion for Pokemon growing up. I was a competitive Pokemon player from the trading card game. COVID kind of took away the events from me, and so I pivoted all of that into, trying to learn e-commerce and make a business out of it. And then the third thing is I really started to love the community and being able to kind of knowledge share and teach, other people how to sell this stuff. And so during that time, I had a lot of friends kind of tell me the time and effort that I was putting into the Lab TCG, and both before it was a YouTube channel and as just kind of like a business, was a waste of time because I would stay up all night packaging orders or scouting for inventory or making super small returns, trying to make a very, very small amount of money into a little bit more of a smaller amount of money. If you take $100 and you make 10% on it, it's only $110, whereas other people might have sexier ideas of Shopify dropshipping stores and 100% returns and all of this stuff. And so, I kind of always just ignored what people were saying and put my time and effort into what I really enjoyed doing because I loved it. I loved the late night sorting cards. I loved treasure hunting at garage sales and finding, those gold stars in bulk collections and paying very little for them. I just actually really, really, really loved it. And the fun just kind of grew when I started to have an audience of people that were interacting with me in a way that they also shared the same interest and hobby. And so I poured a lot of time in my late teens, early 20s into running this Pokemon business, and it taught me a ton of stuff. I largely feel that having the Lab TCG while I was working at the job that I was working at when I first started doing it actually resulted in me being able to pivot my career path into working in finance, full-time as a profession. And I think having the Lab TCG as kind of like my testing ground for business acumen was a great display of me putting my efforts into something that resulted into something bigger. Teaching discipline, taking risks, learning through trial and error how to buy collections, and sometimes, the condition's not right, how do you negotiate with sellers. All of this stuff was so valuable for me growing up, kind of being able to do this stuff. And when it kind of came to an end towards the end of the life of the Lab TCG, when I stopped uploading and decided that I no longer wanted to do it, a lot of that was because of time, frankly. My work commands a lot of my time, and I kind of fell out of interest with the hustle and grind of always flipping the cards. I was constantly trying to figure out ways to take the Pokemon trading card game business, which was a very, very small margin return business, and try and find ways to make it bigger, whether that was like expanding internationally, trying to use Amazon FBA as a way to like reduce labor costs on my side, all sorts of stuff. I was always very, very creative about how can I try and squeeze more margins out of this to make it more lucrative and worth more of my time. But in the end, I just decided, this isn't something that I'm as interested in anymore, and I want to pivot my efforts into other stuff such as, health, or my new YouTube channel, which is Jenkins Will, or at Jenkins Will, it's just my name, where I talk about, personal finance and career success and all sorts of other stuff. And business lessons from the Lab TCG. So there's some good gold on there too. But a lot of the reason I stopped doing it was simply my life had just changed drastically since I kind of started on that path. And so I kind of fell out of favor with it. But I largely look back on this period of time as something that was absolutely worth my time and effort. Now, for the purpose of this video, more specifically, my encouragement to people that are still on this journey, that still get value out of the videos that I produced back then, is to stay the course. And I'm gonna talk about some lessons that I look back on that I wish I did a little bit differently when I was running this business. And so what do I mean by stay the course? When I was in Pokemon, I always knew that the sealed product appreciated over time. And so very early days, I kind of had interactions where I would take sealed products, or like amiibos, if you know what those are, and different collectibles, and I would just kind of hold on to them, and I would never open them because my dad had kind of pointed out to me that collectibles are an interesting kind of category of asset class, which that was not how he explained it to me. That's the finance person here talking. But he kind of explained it to me that collectibles are this interesting thing. If there's a lot of demand for them, people typically pay more for them over time. Pokemon is something that's scarce. You can see this with old booster packs such as base set and stuff like that. And if you hold on to them, it's possible that they appreciate over time. And kind of through being in Pokemon for an extended period of time, the trend with this stuff continues to be true, and that it would always go up. And so there were a lot of instances where I actively tried to hold on to Pokemon product as a way to kind of give myself exposure to potential upside that would be the case and that theory would hold true. There's videos on my channel of me making mistakes with that, such as selling Evolving Skies cases and Chilling Reign cases a bit prematurely and then not being able to purchase them on a reprint. But the larger theme outside of trying to grow the business directly was I know that the sealed product has value and I should try to acquire sealed product at all costs. And so what was really interesting is when the Pokemon market started to kind of flatline, kind of in the 2022 to I guess 2024 time period, where I was buying boxes of Paradox Rift and Scarlet and Violet base and some of these other sets for $95 from a distributor, getting them, and then I couldn't even sell them for that much money, and it felt bad because actively I'd be asked by the distributors to purchase worse and worse and worse quality products with no margins and no ability to sell them. And even though I had put time and effort into building a brand and a Shopify and stuff, no one was going to buy a box of Scarlet and Violet from me for $120 when you could go on TCG Player and get it for $80. And so through that lens, I kind of chalked it up to, all right, I can't sell and make a profit now, but it's possible that in the future these things go up in value, and so I should just hold on to them. Similarly with singles, I never really looked at the singles stuff as, if I take a loss on this card that's too bad, I'll kind of hold it. And so I kind of started to operate the Lab TCG a little bit more in like an investment firm way, where I would try to kind of take the mindset that if I can't quick flip the thing, it's okay if I hold on to it. And I always took the profits from the Lab TCG and reinvested it back into the business. So there was not really a whole lot of incentive for me to like try and aggressively get rid of the inventory, which I think was a different lesson, which, if I was going to do this again and operate this business, I would absolutely try and maximize free cash flow and make sure that I had metrics for everything, trying to, empty the inventory as fast as possible, as quickly as possible, because the downside of laziness and, you've all been there if you're selling this stuff, you see that pile of bulk and you don't actually want to do anything with it, even though it's going to make you money. Having that stuff sit around over time amassed into thousands and thousands of cards that was just sitting money that could have been used for more productive usage at the time, taking money and reinvesting it, finding new opportunities to then keep going and going and going. And so I guess the broader point here is like there are absolutely flaws in how I was running the business at the time where I would have done differently, but it worked out in that Pokemon is a unique kind of thing, and that all of this stuff is appreciated over time. And just this year, as I mentioned at the start of the video, the value of all of that stuff has skyrocketed enormously. And so all of that time and effort, at the time would have been worth a lot less than it is now, where looking back, I can say, well, because I was just passionate about this thing and I, kind of dedicated to it, and then I also held on to it. I didn't sell stuff early. I didn't allow like the fear of the market being unstable to kind of hurt me. That ended up working out. And of course, the market today obviously seems a little hot. I would be slightly concerned that there would be a looming crash, because it seems almost unrealistic that some of the sealed product stuff has tripled in value over the course of a year or so. But I'm not an expert on that, and that's more just kind of objective baseline feeling of what I kind of see about it. But it is really interesting to kind of see how much stuff has run up in this time frame. And so that's kind of like the first lesson. I think the second lesson, though, is I wish that I had gone harder on what I believed in. And so this might sound a little strange, considering I just told you I spent 4 years of my life like doing this stuff, and then even before that was in the Pokemon trading card game competitively and all that stuff. But what I mean is I got really into personal finance when I started the Lab TCG, and so there was a part of me that wanted the Lab TCG to be this business that I had as kind of a second source of income in addition to what I was doing. But I was also really into stocks and cryptocurrency and trying to invest just broadly to set myself up for the future. And so what ended up happening is I started the Lab TCG with $500. So I set aside $500 from, at the time I think I was working at McDonald's, and I said, I'm going to buy a collection of cards and I'm going to start this business with this $500. And so I think in some of the videos I've kind of held up actually, ironically enough, it is this box. This box is what the $500 collection came in and where I stored it. You can even see the Lab TCG. So that would have been when I first started all those years ago. It's actually funny it's here. I forgot about that. Using that $500, I just reinvested the profits every time I would make it. So that $500 compounded every time. And so I would turn over the inventory, buy new inventory, sell through all that inventory, buy it again, continuously. And that amount of money is what eventually now is, a $100,000 Pokemon collection that is appreciated over time, and singles and memorabilia and all that stuff. But here's where I think I actually made kind of a mistake. There were moments in time where opportunities would have came up with distributors or collections or business deals or other opportunities that I simply couldn't afford at the time as the Lab TCG. If I only had a couple of $1,000s in capital and there's a really big opportunity, I myself as like the entity would not be able to do that simply because I didn't have the money to do it. I was very against taking out loans. I didn't want to seek out external funding, nothing like that. I was very much like, I want to pursue this business with cash and the inventory that I have exclusively. And so looking back, I would have almost believed in myself a little bit more and taken funds that ultimately ended up going towards stocks and cryptocurrency and other asset stuff, like investing wise, and fueled the business with that to go faster, because I proved to myself that I was able to source inventory and sell it and make a return on it. And so I was always a little too scared to take my personal money and put it into that. Whereas I think that was just kind of irrational thinking, and I should have thought about it more from like a returns perspective, in that, if the average return of the S&P 500 in a given year is 7 to 12%, that's broad, but let's say 7. If I'm confident in my ability to take, $500 and make a 20% return on that $500 with Pokemon, well, that's a better use of that money, and it's probably faster to, turn that inventory over and over and over again. Because if you're making 20% multiple times, then your overall return could be much greater than if you had taken like one base amount of money and put it into the S&P 500 and let it run. And so I don't regret investing in stocks or anything either. That worked out well too, which that had its own uncertainty and ambiguity. But I think I had a skill set that I wish I leaned much more into. And so my lesson or takeaway for the viewers today is, if you learn this stuff and get really into it and you start to produce results that you're comfortable with, and you're starting to kind of get the juices flowing of like, this is what it's like to be a business owner, lean into that. Don't put your personal self into a position where you're taking out credit card debt or you're over leveraging yourself. But if you have additional funds that you would be otherwise putting into other stuff or investing, or you're saving money for something, and you have this successful business kind of going, lean into that. Like put fuel to the flame, because I think the result, had I had done that throughout my life, I probably would have had more inventory, more product, more growth, scale, etc., than I ended up with, kind of in retrospect of the whole thing. Now, obviously, I can sit here objectively and say this worked out, and the sealed product appreciated and all that stuff. But at the time, I had a belief that would happen. I didn't know it was going to happen, and so we have to take a grain of salt with that. But looking back, looking at the videos, looking about some of those trade-off moments, I wish I had taken more of my personal funds from other stuff and put it into the business to kind of fuel it and go faster. And working with distributors, you're often asked to buy thousands of dollars on unprofitable product to then get a small amount of good product. And so there were times where I wouldn't be able to do that, because they would have these bundles of thousands of dollars of cards, and I just didn't have the funds to do that at any given time. So that would be another one. And then now I guess the third thing I would kind of say to the folks pursuing this, that we really didn't touch on in a lot of the videos on the Lab TCG. I mean, I think a few of them early days, we talked about profit and loss statements a little bit, but I would get really savvy about understanding how like the three financial statements work. Your statement of cash flows, your balance sheet, and your income statement, and getting really, really savvy about how businesses use accounting and finance to kind of propel growth and find opportunities and other stuff like that. Because now that I've worked in finance and I've done, work on actual businesses with this stuff, looking back at what I did when I was younger, I was kind of running blind. I knew that if I sold cards and I made more than I had bought them for, I was making money. But I think there was probably a lot of time spent on opportunities that, weren't as lucrative as I probably thought they were, not accounting for my time in what I was doing, costs kind of adding up across stuff that I wasn't paying super close attention to, such as, changes in shipping costs and postage and other stuff like that. I always did a pretty good job of like tracking all of it and kind of staying up to date on it, but I think it was done in a little bit of a lazy way where if you were really, really sharp about it, you would want to be able to explain to someone, hey, what is your operating margin or your gross profit during a given time period, and have an answer to that. Because a lot of friends that I've had that get into this stuff, they talk about revenue a lot. As you can see, some of the videos I've made are, I made this much in revenue during this time period, or something like that, because revenue is like the big sexy number of top line sales that you say, in my TCG player account I have this much revenue and this is how much I sold. But that's not how the business works. There's downstream costs and other things that go into that change how much your profit actually is. And especially as you start to pay yourself from a business, or as you're trying to reinvest that profit into other things, if you don't understand what's actually happening behind the business in terms of like being able to track every single thing, or being able to explain this stuff to an accountant, you can get yourself into trouble, but also you're running blind, where I think, yes, it is fun and entertaining to be working in Pokemon stuff specifically because it's cool and it's cute and it's fun, but if you're going to be running a business, treat it like one and put time into, studying up on how people actually run businesses. If I were to do this again, I would have put a lot more emphasis on that as opposed to kind of strengthening my knowledge on the Pokemon side first. But anyways, I know I'm kind of rambling, but I wanted to kind of make a video because I'm absolutely amazed at not only the continued strength of the community that lives on without me as a person. The brand of the Lab TCG is one where people come to these videos and they watch these tutorials and all of this information, and so I'm so happy that I've been able to help so many people on their journey, even though I myself don't do it anymore. And I don't respond to the comments anymore. I don't really respond to emails anymore, but I do see them all. And so I appreciate all the people that have taken the initiative and the ambition to reach out to me and ask questions. The Discord server is still live and well. There are tons of people every day talking about stuff in the Discord server and doing things. And so, as a kind of final send off to the folks that are still grinding, keep it up, stay the course. This stuff will work out, and I promise you, even if you don't make money doing it, you're going to learn something valuable by teaching yourself these business skills that you can apply to something else. So with that being said, I can't remember if I had an outro for my YouTube videos, but thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all soon.